One of the reasons why we want to have an educational presentation on our philosophy and where we began, I think it's really important for all of us to understand what's happening in our healthcare system. So what you're going to learn in this presentation is who we are, where we began, what is integrative medicine. I did copy this for you, by the way, so you can have a copy of this for your future studying if you want. So what is wrong with our healthcare system? One of the reasons why I want to talk about that is because as you're representing Dunwoody Labs, you're also representing integrative medicine. So there's a lot of confusion. What is integrative medicine? We're going to talk about that. Why are so many Americans suffering with chronic disease? Dunwoody Labs, Progressive Medical Management. I want to just pause there for a second. So I think it's very important to understand that Progressive Medical Management doesn't own Dunwoody Labs. Progressive Medical Management doesn't own the professional corporations. I am not practicing medicine anymore. My passion, one of the reasons why I went to medical school, I did it the other way around. I actually was involved in fitness, health coaching at that time, which I didn't call it that 25 years ago. Had a PhD in nutrition, got a naturopathic degree, and then I went to medical school 7 years later because I wanted to teach. And I wanted to make an impact in the allopathic community. And I tell you that because I love seeing patients, and I think it's wonderful to have that experience, but you can only do so much. So Dr. Burnett and I have a very similar vision on teaching and reaching. And one of the reasons why we're such big believers on laboratory diagnostics that really make an impact is that it does make a difference. And we're going to go through all of our testing. But I wanted you to understand that we are a laboratory. We are a visionary management company that has an impact on chronic diseases. I'll educate you what really chronic diseases are. And why working as a team will give us the edge at Dunwoody Labs and support you. Because I really believe that without teamwork, we're not going to get to the next level. We have a very unique situation in our country right now. We're very divided. There's a dichotomy in healthcare. You got one side that actually is looking at cost containment and they're looking at suppressing symptoms. You have another side that's really looking for root causes and cost containment, yeah, of course, but when you look at it, you either pay now or you pay later. We have a medical system right now, a healthcare debate, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but I want to mention this, that everybody's talking healthcare, healthcare, healthcare. It's not a healthcare debate. It's an insurance debate. We're not talking about providing healthcare solutions. So every time you hear our government and you're Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter what you are, they all have the wrong answers because no one's really talking about the root causes. So that what's their philosophy? More immunizations, more dangerous diagnostic testing. Now, some of it's necessary, okay? We can talk about that, but my purpose today is to hopefully enlighten you and empower you to take responsibility, number one, for yourself. Number two, take that vision, whether it's with Dunwoody Labs or Progressive Medical Management or whatever else you decide to do. Because ultimately, it's individuals such as us that have a vision that really make an impact. I will always believe in diagnostic testing. It's going to change. What I believed in 20 years ago, we're not even doing today because technology changes, science changes. Medicine is an art. It is not all science. So when I'm debating an allopathic physician, for those of you who don't know the definition of allopathic physician, forgive me for giving you the definition. It is someone that actually practices the standard of care that's dictated by the American Medical Association, which used to be a really good association 200 years ago. They lost their vision, which we'll talk about. But it's someone that uses drugs, surgery, medication. That's their toolbox. That's it. We know that integrative medicine is good medicine. Why is that good medicine? Well, I want to just mention, because Dr. Burdett told you a little bit about how Dunwoody Labs started. Progressive Medical Management started with a vision I had over 25 years ago. Believe it or not, I had no desire to be in medicine. I used to be, after college, I joined the Air Force and I served our country and I was something called the combat control. I had no desire to be in medicine. I was interested in health, but it wasn't until my father got gravely ill at the age of 46, I lost my father. I felt responsible because when I looked at his situation, he had non-lymphoma Hodgkin's, he died in 6 months. So I'm saying to myself, really? No one talked about nutrition. No one talked about why. No doctor said to my dad or my mom, why? Because all they do is just treat, treat, treat. I ask why. I'm very inquisitive. I should have been born in Missouri, the show me state, but really, I'm from New Jersey like Tom. Don't hold it against us. We may have to beat you. We may have to beat you guys up. Anyway, it's funny how I met Tom. Tom actually I met from my brother Leo, which is a really good story as well. And he's involved in networking group. So that's what really started me on my journey. And I was angry. And you may want to call it righteous indignation, but I don't think so. I was just angry, and my wife knows that as well. But that really galvanized me and started my journey. And I had a vision to really create an opportunity for patients to get to the root cause if possible. And that's how Progressive started. And then when Dr. Burnett came to me, is that for those of you that are in the industry, there used to be a laboratory called Metametrics. Anybody remember Metametrics? Okay. So we were actually, at that time, did most of our laboratory testing with Metametrics, except for our wellness panels. We were probably their largest client share, would you say? We were actually about at close to $1 million, and I thought Metametrics was wonderful. But we had a disagreement with one of their new chief financial officers, and Dr. Burdett used to work with Metametrics, and I had a lot of respect for Dr. Brawley and what he created there. But they really rubbed us the wrong way, and that kind of galvanized into action. And when she came to me, let's start a lab, I'm like, really? It's hard enough being in a clinic business with the regulations. You want a laboratory? No offense, Clea. So anytime you got to deal with the federal government, I'm always like, okay, let's talk about that. But she convinced me. She's a very good orator and debater. So, so I challenged Dr. Burdett, and we did get our license, and we started off very small, as she mentioned, and we grew, and we had some growing pains, and this is why we brought some key individuals such as Greg Buckley, who didn't really discuss his credentials, which is extremely outstanding as far as I'm concerned, running large organizations. And Greg had a vision for healthcare as well. And of course, Bob is doing a phenomenal job as our operations, and he will continue to support us. But I want you guys to understand that we created Dunwoody Labs for progressive clinics, but then that expanded. And now we're in a different area, and our vision is really to offer a lot of unique testing for all physicians. So we're not just looking for integrative doctors, we're also looking for allopathic physicians as well. I believe they're open. I think the time is right now, especially a lot of gastroenterologists. Interesting, psychiatrists, which I consider the most unscientific modality in medicine, actually they're becoming very open integrative medicine. They really realize it's the gut that is the second brain. So it's really, we have a lot of opportunities. So the more we can empower ourselves, what's happening in our healthcare system, you can really assist these poor physicians that are just being ostracized. Doctors are really being criticized. Doctors are actually being made out to be the problem with healthcare, and they are the solution to healthcare, okay? And the right physicians. So where we're going is that we will continue to grow, and we will continue to look for the best testing. Dr. Burdett and I found out very early, because when you get her and I in the same room together, we got 50 different ideas going, wham. It takes time to bring a test to the marketplace. It takes time to validate it. It takes time to understand, is this test worthy for the physician? One of the reasons why I like diagnostic testing, most of the time, a good integrative doctor knows about 75% of what's wrong with the patient, just by the history, just by clinical diagnosis, just from our experience, just from empirical data. Why I like the diagnostic testing is for the patient, okay? Especially chronic diseases. When I'm talking about changing someone's diet, their lifestyle, their viewpoint, their spirituality, how they relax, stress, when we have testing, the compliance goes high. Both of you are dietitians. We love dietitians, by the way, okay? The ones that are trained properly, of course. No offense, but the ones in the hospital, I'm sorry. Okay. I mean, it's terrible. Okay. We have all dietitians here. How many do we have now, Greg? 3 or 4? What, Nikki? Okay. So we're a big believer in dietitians. We think you guys are great communicators, much better than doctors, by the way. Okay. And for those clients that only treat patients and talk about nutrition, I really encourage, if their practice is large enough, always get a nutrition. I really support dietitians, to be honest with you. I have nothing against clinical nutritionists. I think dietitians have better training. But my point is that testing really helps us determine what the patient really needs, and compliance goes up. And we all know that. So why is integrative medicine and functional diagnostic on the vanguard of medicine? Because it just makes sense. We can sit there and we can discover and we can dissect. You know, when we discovered looking at the Genome Project and said, oh, this is going to solve all of our problems, and it didn't. There's 23,000 genomes. There's nothing wrong with looking at the DNA, but what do you do with that information, okay? It's really the expression, it's the epigenetics that we have to really understand, and that's something that we're going to discuss as well. Why is integrative medicine so important? If you look at this wheel, I think it's important to understand that this wheel really sums it up. It's that when you look at surgery, pharmaceuticals, herbal medicine, nutritional medicine, lifestyle, mind, body, spirit, energy, manipulative therapies, getting to the root cause, it's just good medicine based on good science. And one of the reasons why we created the wheel at Progressive is that when you're talking to a potential physician or someone you've had a long-standing relationship, don't look at yourself as just, I want him to order as much testing as possible because this is how I make my living. I want you to change your thought process and say, how can I help this practice with other potential modalities to really help them? They may not do all of them. Not every office should be a Progressive. Sometimes what we have is too confusing as well. And we're constantly training our physicians, but for those solo practitioners, just giving them some insight will make a dramatic difference in how they help their patients as well. So that's one of the reasons why I want to have this presentation to help you guys when you talk to other physicians. So what is integrative medicine? Integrative medicine is a term that no one really has taken responsibility. The best physician I can tell you is Andrew Weil. I have a lot of respect for Andrew Weil. However, most of the physicians that go through Andrew Weil's program really aren't practicing the type of integrative medicine that Dr. Burdett and I teach. No criticism, I like it, but they're not really getting to the core. They're not talking about diagnostics. Hopefully they'll change that, but it's kind of sprinkling on integrative medicine, and what we teach is more functional diagnostics. And if you take a look at the definition of integrative medicine, it's looking body, mind, spirit, including all aspects of lifestyle, emphasizes the therapeutic relationship, and make use of all appropriate therapies, both conventional and natural. So integrative doctors, we will use a medication when it's necessary. We will talk about potentially surgery if something doesn't work. There's some surgeries we'll never talk about. We're not against chemotherapy when it's done properly. We have a lot of patients coming in with traditional chemotherapy, and we support their immune system as well. So we're making a lot of positive strides there. But basically, our goal is to get to the root cause. And integrative medicine is really a partnership. I want you to understand that. It's a partnership between that practitioner and the patient. And we have a philosophy that neither rejects conventional medicine or we accept natural therapies uncritically. What does that basically mean? Just because something natural doesn't mean I'm going to use it unless I look at the science and really understand. Because ultimately, my philosophy, Dr. Burdett's philosophy, is when we graduated medical school, we raised our hand, we had the Hippocrates Oath, and part of that was first do no harm. Now today, I'm going to call that the Hypocrite Oath because we're seeing a lot of nice, like-minded physicians that think they're doing the best thing, practicing standard of care, actually can damage more patients than help them, okay? And we'll see one of the slides I have. There's a professor from Harvard that showed that iatrogenic disease, and if you don't know what that is, I'm going to give you the definition, so stay awake in about 5 minutes. Those of you that know, I applaud you. I'll let you have some yogurt in the back if you know the answer, okay? So recognition that good medicine should be based on good science. And here's the key. Integrative practitioners are inquiry driven. We're asking why. We're asking what can we do to make it better? How can we help that patient? We just shouldn't throw a bunch of supplements at them without an explanation. If I go to a patient and I see them for 5 minutes and I throw a couple prescriptions at them and just give a bunch of supplements, oh, by the way, why don't you just go ahead and do the ketogenic diet and maybe we'll talk about the paleo and we'll do all these fad diets without, and how successful am I going to be with that patient if I didn't connect? Allopathic medicine, maybe they're, you know, when you're doing rotations in your residency, you don't have a lot of time. Statistics are kind of varied. You might have 12 minutes depending on where you practice, of course, depending on the kind of practice. But I don't think most physicians have more than 20 minutes at tops in a traditional setting, of course. So they have to make very quick decisions. And I'm not saying a lot of them aren't right. They don't have the time. And integrative doctors, we should have more time to do that. My philosophy will never change. I believe integrative medicine will continue to be the future. I believe integrative medicine will solve the majority of our healthcare issues, not all of them, because we're human and we're going to constantly make mistakes, and medicine's an art. I think medicine's more of an art than a science, and I'm open to debate anybody that. So it's important for you guys to know what is an integrative physician. An integrative physician has been traditionally trained. They realize that the medical system is broken and placating symptoms is not the answer. And they have training in nutrition, naturopathy, osteopathy, detoxification, IV therapy, and they've spent hundreds, even thousands of additional hours preparing themselves to be integrative doctors. Here's the key. Being open-minded and being a really good listener, which is hard for doctors to do, okay? But it can be just something as having a connection, good contact, and creating a good staff, that all makes a difference. So if you go into a doctor's office and they're a solo practice, and I've been to many doctor's offices, and my problem is I analyze everything when I go in. Even if I don't talk to the doctor, that's just the way I am. I kind of like, oh, this is good, oh, this is not good. I'm not criticizing, but if you see something and you have a really good approach and a good report, they're going to be very thankful for some of your suggestions, which builds a great opportunity. So what kind of patients seek integrative practices? Anybody have an idea? They want answers. They're dissatisfied with their health. They want to feel healthier. Well, let me pause. I didn't write this. What kind of patient population practices preventative medicine? What kind of patients? Athletes? Who practices? Sick people do. Until you're sick, most people don't really pay attention to your health. I used to have a lot of executives come in, and the majority of their life, they actually are working all the time, creating their wealth. When they get sick and they're trying to regain their health, they lose their wealth trying to regain their health. They have no balance. And what an integrative practice should really all be about is teaching that patient balance. And I truly believe that patients, when they have a diagnosis, they take their health more seriously. And that's another area why Dunwoody Labs has created unique testing to help that physician, that practitioner, ascertain what the problem is for the patient. Conventional medicine does work for urgent care, acute care. We have the best healthcare system for that. Okay? Our testing is not designed for urgent care. We will never have testing for urgent care. We have a wellness panel that maybe the CMP and CBC can help, but we don't want to be that kind of laboratory. Okay? We have other laboratories. In microbiology, it's wonderful that they have that to diagnose that. A lot of patients want to learn preventative steps, and they want to take to ensure that their health is better for the future. And we have a lot of patients right now that are very inquisitive. I call them the Google doctor. And they're going to go in. You have to really help educate. Yeah, your practitioner already knows this as well. But we are strictly a laboratory that only markets to licensed practitioners. We're talking about creating another division for education, but from right now, we're only dealing with physicians and nurse practitioners and naturopathic physicians and licensed states and physician's assistants and osteopathic doctors, a lot of chiropractors as well, but they need to have a MD-DC relationship we'll talk about. What's wrong with our healthcare system? Now, I'm not here to give you my opinion politically. That's not my point here. I can care less about that right now. What I want you to understand is that what's wrong is, number one, our cost is out of control. Number two, we have a medicine underground dictatorship. I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. The pharmaceutical industry, FDA collusion, the mission of the AMA, health insurance industry. This is my philosophy. Part of my last doctorate degree was a doctorate in public health. I had to write a book, and I picked this topic, what's wrong with the healthcare system. So I have 7 chapters, and I did a lot of research. And that was about 5 years ago, so things changed a little bit, but they're pretty much the same, despite that. So I have a little cartoon here. I always like to make a joke about this. This is unfortunately true, especially with HMOs. So this is a little graph here that I like. In 2000, this is 2012, I believe. $2.2 trillion. What strike this is very interesting to me is that when you look at all the money spent here, about 48% was spent on chronic disease, which is a lot, okay? Urgent care, I really believe that our cost is probably going to go up. But for chronic disease, I think we're going to make an impact, and eventually that may make an impact on chronic disease expenditures. But we're spending $2.2 trillion. In 2014, I've not validated these numbers, but it was predicted $2.7 trillion on healthcare. Just to give you guys an idea, that's about 19% of our gross national product. That's a lot. That's like 1 in 5. So for every dollar we spend in our economy, 20 cents goes to health care, okay? So when we talk about the Affordable Health Care Act, it really became the Unaffordable Health Care Act because we tried to solve a problem, which is really a health care mandate, and we tried to solve the problem for 50 million uninsured Americans, when really I think we could have solved the problem differently, but that's a different topic. But we're spending the most money out of any country in the world, yet we are one of the unhealthiest in the world. Now, who said that? The World Health Organization put out a report that we rank 37th out of 191 nations. This is really a terrible statistic concerning how much money we spend. According to CIA, this is really funny, by the way, the Central Intelligence Agency actually has a whole report on healthcare, which is really interesting. They got a great website, by the way. They ranked the United States 42nd in the world for longevity. And the reason why they did that is they looked at all these different countries. You'll never guess what the #1 country was for age, living the longest. Anybody have an idea which country it is?
Switzerland.
Switzerland? No.
Norway?
Nope. Monaco. 90.2 years of age. That's Monaco. It's a small country. Anyway, they have a lot of money. Okay. Anyway, Japan was next at 84 was the average age. And in the United States, we rank 42nd in the world. So for all the money we're spending, we're living 78 years. I really believe that it's potentially we all can become centenarians depending on, obviously accidents will affect that. But if we practice some of the philosophies of integrated medicine, you could have a long, healthy life, absent of disease, but I really believe that our world is so toxic, we have a long way to go. So that's the 89, there you go. Okay. I really like to study history. Has anybody heard of Benjamin Rush, MD? Okay, you're about to get a history lesson. So Benjamin Rush, MD, actually was part of our founding fathers, and he wrote in his memoirs, unless we put medical freedom into the Constitution, a time will come when medicine will organize into an undercover dictatorship to restrict the art of healing to one class of men and deny equal privileges to others. will constitute the Bastille of medical science. Bastille is French for prison. All such laws are un-American and despotic and do not have a place in our republic. Therefore, the Constitution of this republic should make special privileges for medical freedom as well as religious freedom. Now, why did I put this in here? If I asked the average American, do you have medical freedom in our country? Do you guys believe we have medical freedom in our country? Okay, it's not in the Constitution. It's not. We have a religious freedom, which is a good thing. We have the right to bear arms, which can also be a good thing, depending how you look at it, depending on where you live, of course. I still believe it's a good thing for responsible individuals. Benjamin Rush was a visionary. He knew that medicine can become an underground dictatorship. Now, who are they? So this is Benjamin Rush. He was a leading physician. He actually wrote a lot of books. He practiced in Philadelphia, and he also was George Washington's personal physician. And he was a great visionary. So the first thing I want to talk about is the FDA, just to give you guys an idea. I call them the FDA. I think the FDA actually does a lot of good things at the beginning. President Teddy Roosevelt started it in 1906. However, I love this cartoon. It really depicts what's happening. And the reason why I show this is because, just to give you an idea, we've had more lawsuits in the past 20 years since the history of the United States. Now, do we advertise pharmaceuticals on television in the United States? Okay. For those of you that have traveled outside the country into other countries, have you ever seen a pharmaceutical ad on television there? Yes or no? Okay. Most countries believe that advertising pharmaceuticals takes away the ability for that doctor to make a medical decision. It has been shown in studies that out of 10 prescriptions asked by the patients, the doctor has no choice in certain circumstances to give that patient a prescription, otherwise they're going to go to another doctor. 6 out of 10 prescriptions are written because the patient asked the doctor for the purple pill. And now we're finding out the purple pill, which is a proton pump inhibitor, is causing tremendous amounts of nutritional deficiencies. It can affect the acetylcholine pathways, so now we're seeing problems with early dementia. You know, we're seeing these over-the-counter medications that are anticholinergic medications. Now, after taking for 2 years, we're seeing Alzheimer's being contributing to that, okay, as one of the possible causative factors. We're seeing all these essential fatty acids. Yes, I use the word essential fatty acids. I never heard of essential Tylenol. I've never heard of essential chemotherapy, but I've heard of essential fatty acids. I've heard of essential amino acids, all of these that the body needs to live and thrive. So what's happened is that the FDA started off protecting us. And it wasn't until 1937 when there was a sulfonamide tragedy that the government gave them power. And that power has been abused in certain situations. This is not a conspiracy. A lot of FDA officials do work for pharmaceutical companies. And of course, we need to have an organization that regulates. I do believe we need to have an organization that regulates medications properly. But I believe that the FDA has lost its vision. And, you know, approval of dangerous medications such as Vioxx. Dr. Graham, who I have a lot of respect for, he's a medical doctor and also has a public health degree, blew the whistle on Vioxx. If those of you don't know who Vioxx is responsible for over 200,000 deaths worldwide. The lawsuit was about maybe $4 billion, okay? But they made probably 30 billion or 25 billion. So it was like a drop in the bucket to them, but not for the 200,000 people that lost their lives because it actually affected the valve. Now, I have no problem with a doctor prescribing a medication that's dangerous as long as there's a black label on it. I really don't, because then it's risk versus benefit. And let the physician make that decision. The problem is Vioxx didn't disclose that information soon enough, and they knew about it. So we're going to continue to have problems Same thing with the FDA. The FDA was established in 160 years ago. So you know we're looking about 1850s, and it was a wonderful organization because it brought like-minded physicians together to really collaborate and to really bring the benefit of their knowledge. The problem is they've created a monopoly. You cannot have ICD-10 codes, you cannot have CPT codes. They pretty much control the names of diseases, and they really just had their own clique. And we used to have something called eclectic physicians back in the early 1900s, and it wasn't until Abraham Flexner, who was had a doctorate of education, that started to discredit naturopathic schools, homeopathic schools, osteopathy, nutrition, and because they were being poured in tons of money from some of these large families as well. The Carnegie family as well, and Rockefellers, and they made investments in the pharmaceutical. And the way they made an impact is they poured in money into medical schools. So what do you think they teach in medical school? Allopathic medicine. And now we're going full circle that we're seeing a lot of medical schools are looking at integrative as well. Because, listen, I'd be the first one to tell all of you that if allopathic medicine solved all the problems, let's all just go ahead and take statin drugs. Let's put it in our water. Don't you want to drink statin water? Doesn't it make sense to put it in our children's water? Ooh, that's really smart. But you know, who's making these decisions? They didn't go to medical school. Okay? It's profit-driven, because the truth of the matter is we need those fats. I hate to criticize you guys, but you're all a bunch of fat heads anyway, like me. And what are we doing? We're affecting the quality of our life, because if cholesterol was the root cause of heart disease, why is cholesterol #2 killer? So over 600,000 Americans lost their life last year to heart disease. And it's really not heart disease, it's vessel disease. Okay? Only a small percentage really is heart disease. It's vascular disease. So it's not the answer. So this is from a professor in Harvard, Professor Leap. He conducted the most comprehensive study. So this is iatrogenic. Can anybody tell me what iatrogenic disease is? Dr. Burdett, don't say anything. Close. Doctor error, which encompasses medication, which encompasses, so practicing medicine by the book. So I got a book, I got a manual. I'm a technician now, because a technician follows the book. A doctor is a teacher. A doctor in Latin is docere, is to teach that patient. Now, in an emergency situation, we're going to save the patient's life. And sometimes they're not going to make it. And that's unfortunate. But at least they tried. But for chronic disease, a patient's going to come in and they've got all kinds of aches and pains and all these symptoms, and I'm just going to give them a steroid just to make them really feel good. Did I really solve the problem? No. An integrative doctor may give a steroid temporarily and say, let's run this test, let's run this, let's look at your diet, let's talk about the stress. And what's happening here is that Professor Leap, this is a low number, by the way. 120,000 Americans die each year. Some doctors, Gary Knoll, PhD, did a study with Carolyn Dean, MD, she's a medical doctor and a naturopathic doctor. They estimate about 800,000, they put a report out, 800,000 Americans. Now, whatever it is, iatrogenic is a big problem in our country. Just imagine right now, if 2 airplanes crashed today with approximately 164 passengers, what would the government do? You think they just sit there and say, oh, hey, lost another plane? Why? What? Okay, that's one airplane. Look what happened. Why are we suppressing this for medical? Because doctors are elevated. The healthcare system, oh, it's going to happen anyway. These are pharmaceutical errors. And this is why integrative medicine is the answer, and that when you're talking to your physicians to help them about the Dunwoody lab testing, you don't have to beat them over the head with this, but if you engage in a conversation, a lot of doctors know this anyway, and they're going to be encouraged by the support. Health insurance companies, you know, health insurance companies are necessary, of course, But the cost is out of control, and the public perception is that insurance is necessary for health. Insurance is not necessary for health. Insurance defrays a catastrophic event. Yes, I'm glad we have the best hospitals in the world for urgent care. I really am. Trust me, for those of you that traveled, I've been to some really bizarre countries, okay? You don't want to be in a hospital in Turkey, let me tell you right now. No offense to Turkey, okay? Or some of these other third world countries. I used to, when I was in the Air Force, I traveled a lot, and trust me, I was in Honduras. You don't want to be in a hospital there, okay? Maybe they're better now, but you guys understand. America's got the best hospital. The problem is that these insurance companies really pay, and Greg left for this because we're not paying him this much, but the Dr. McGuire made $54 million in 1 year in United Healthcare. $54 million. Now, you know, you can say, well, this is America, he's an entrepreneur. No. They're denying $100 claims for type 2 diabetic patients that have diabetic neuropathy. They're denying testing. And he's getting $54 million. The stock options were $357 million. Are you kidding me? And they're denying claims for, so my point is, I have no problem with these CEOs making money in these large organizations, but what they've done is they've demonized doctors. And this has been wrong with the health insurance companies as well. Is that going to change? I don't think so. You know, I think that the squeaky wheel always gets the grease, and that we need to continue to complain. Governor Cuomo fined United Healthcare Insurance $50 million for their unfair business tactics in New York. So that's a good start. John Oxendine, who's a friend of ours, was a former insurance commissioner in the state of Georgia for 16 years, and he battled the insurance companies, and he also fined Cigna. So, you know, is it an easy problem? I just want to bring you guys an awareness that the health insurance companies debate. So, my philosophy in integrated medicine is a cheerful heart is good medicine. And I love this little cartoon here. That's all the alternative medicine your HMO will pay for. Now, will insurance companies eventually pay for integrative medicine? You know, possibly, but our testing is standard of care that can be used either direction. So we don't promote ourselves as, oh, we're not an alternative laboratory, okay? Some of the testing can be interpreted that way, but we actually have sound scientific testing that's been validated, and we're going to talk a little bit about immunology in a second here, that is looking at the immunology pathways, that we can literally save money if we can find out what a sensitivity is or a chronic inflammatory marker, and if the patient's compliant, we can save money. Because I can assure you, someone's got Crohn's disease, IBS, how much are they spending with their insurance company? How much are these medications costing? Some of these intravenous therapies that shut down the immune system, they're about $5,000 to $7,000 a month or a quarter whenever they do that. So, you know, what does it make sense to pay for a test, a couple thousand, once a year, once every couple of years? So this is, I do see a trend here. And I do believe that a lot of insurance companies are going to see the benefits of certain diagnostic testing when it's done within reason and thought-provoking and actually ordered from a licensed practitioner. I love this one. Your insurance only pays 80% of my fee. I only took out 80% of your appendix. Doctors are being cut down, and because I have a lot of sympathy for a lot of physicians right now, we have a large practice, it's very difficult for clinics to survive. So when you're talking to a doctor that may be in a state that doesn't have pass-through billing, which pass-through billing, does anybody know what pass-through billing is? Can we raise our hand if you don't? Raise your hand if you don't know what pass-through billing is. Don't be embarrassed. Okay. Pass-through billing basically allows physicians to pay for a laboratory test, and they bill the insurance company and they make the markup, okay? Many states right now, that's illegal to do. Some states are still legal, but most insurance companies are not allowing that to happen anymore. That's a bad thing for the practice. That's a good thing for laboratories. They're doing that because they don't want overutilization of diagnostic testing. It's another cost containment. I understand that. Every test has to have a medical necessity. Every test has to have a licensed physician give us an ICD-10 code. We can't do that for them. we can give them suggestions. They have to make that critical medical decision. The reason I'm telling you this is that doctors are suffering, and from an income perspective. So with our diagnostic test, we'd like to teach doctors, and Dr. Burdett's going to get into this in the next couple days, how to do packages and how to help that physician, and I know additional office visits and helping with nutritional supplements as well that's necessary. So that's one of the areas we want to help doctors. We want doctors to be able to support their practice as well. We will never get involved in any kind of fee splitting. That's illegal. Never do that. We file everything to the law. There are opportunities for certain states with management companies. We can discuss that if there's an interest, but it has to be a legitimate management company, not a facade, and we will not entertain any of that. I'm not interested in it, okay? And that's been our philosophy 100%. We want to help doctors be successful. So, Hippocrates. For those of you who do not know Hippocrates, he's the father of all medicine. And basically, Hippocrates wrote so many different areas, but giving the right individual the right amount of nourishment, exercise, not too little, not too much, we would have found the safest way to help. So that's what an integrative doctor does, is that they really help look at the balance as well. Just a brief overview, what the human body is made of, and this is kind of where we're going to be looking for testing. A lot of us don't realize that we're 65% oxygen, yet we're all becoming hypoxic as well, which is under oxygen, and that we're slowly boiling in this water. The metaphor of the frog boiling in water, when does the frog know he's boiled to death? He doesn't, because the frog goes in lukewarm water, and that's the way I like to relate disease, chronic disease. You start to get some symptoms, you try to push through those symptoms. 5 years later, you get worse and worse and worse. Before you know it, you have a devastating autoimmune disease, a cancer, cardiovascular disease, neurological disease. All of those fit into a chronic perspective. So by really going back to some of the basics, we realize we can make an impact. So I like to educate what the human body is. 100 trillion cells, 3,000 enzymes, 80 to 100,000 1,000 miles of blood vessels, a turnover of immune system every 4 to 6 months. The body can be totally replaced in 6 to 8 years, and we have the new guys on the block, which is DNA and microbiome. Okay? I'll have to say that the microbiome is probably the most important area that we're studying in medicine right now, the most exciting, much more exciting than DNA. The DNA is an imprint. I can't change the DNA. It goes in my genes, but it's how you wear your genes. I want you to think about that. How do you wear your genes? Angelina Jolie, okay. Everybody talked about her, how she had a double radical mastectomy, okay? Because she had positive markers, and her mom had that. So what did she do? She did a radical mastectomy. Now everybody say, oh, let me just have her, but it was really the expression. She might not have had breast cancer, okay? She could have monitored it, and that's where the testing is that we're going right now. I'm not against surgery when you're saving your life, but to look at a DNA test and say, oh, you're not going to get this disease just by looking at a DNA test. Okay? And that's a skewed perspective. Look at the microbiome and looking at how our immune cells turn over. That is a game changer. So why are so many Americans suffering with chronic disease? I call it the 4 I's. Insulin, inflammation, immune system, and infections. And this is what Dunwoody Labs is looking at targeting, that we're looking at targeting the enemy rather than the underlying cause. And that's how allopathic medicine looks at, they're targeting the disease. If you give the body the proper environment to heal, the body will heal itself. That's our philosophy. Okay? No doctor heals any patient. Immunology, this is what Dunwoody Labs is specialized in. But you know, we have an immune system. We actually have 2 immune systems. We have cellular and we have humoral, which is outside the cell. Our diagnostic test is looking at the humoral. Okay? So we're looking at an IgE, an IgG. We're looking at the complement, which creates a cascade and looks at chronic inflammation. But I want you guys to think that the immune system is designed to fight foreign invaders and pathogens and to protect us. But when the immune system is overrun, by environmental toxicants, by endocrine disruptors, when we have an imbalance of stress, which raises the cortisol, your immune system overacts. And now we've got autoimmune diseases. So ultimately, in conventional medicine, what do? Oh, the immune system's overrun. Let me shut it down. Well, that's interesting. So I shut down my immune system, and now I'm susceptible because my immune system can't kill anything. And that's where we have a philosophical difference here. We want to find out what has set off the immune system. And if you take a look at here, the bone marrow and the thymus are the two primary organs for the immune system. Our immune system is looking at all these different pathogens, viruses, protozoa, bacteria, fungi. Our testing is leaning towards that because we know that all of these pathogens leads to chronic inflammation. And Time magazine talked about the secret killer, which is chronic inflammation. So acute inflammation is actually a positive thing. It's telling the body that there's something wrong. Excessive inflammation, which is 3 days or more of acute, goes into chronic, is usually due from diet, stress, environmental toxins, internal sources, metabolic disruptions, and infections. So this is why the Dunwoody lab test with our gut markers, looking at LPS, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and also looking at our chronic inflammation from delayed food sensitivities, and also looking at the IgE and the subtype IgG, which is a blocking agent, can really assist us to determine, hey, what's going on here? Should the doctor do more testing? How many doctors in our country, when a patient comes in with a plethora of symptoms, will basically say, oh, let's run a TSH on you, but they're not looking for the antibodies. And they're making a huge mistake because a lot of these patients have Hashimoto's. But when they do have Hashimoto's disease, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it's an autoimmune disease against the thyroid, so your own immune system's attacking the thyroid. And what we're finding is that because we have a plethora of new toxic elements, we have all of these bromides that we've added into breads, we have all these halogens, we have all of these iodine deficiencies because the thyroid needs iodine and tyrosine and some selenium to convert to glutathione to have healthy thyroid function. And what do? We're just looking at TSH, it's normal, the patient goes away, the patient continues to suffer. And that's why we think our testing is very comprehensive. And we're going to talk more about the core 4, which, yes, a lot of you are here because you like our food sensitivity, which we love that. But we have other testing that you can help educate the physician as well and teach them how to become better integrative doctors because of the chronic inflammation. Inflammation is the key to helping with chronic diseases, and we got to find out. So this is an area that has been substantiated by research that chronic inflammation leads to cancer, diabetes, neurological diseases, autoimmune, arthritis, pulmonary diseases, Alzheimer's, and cardiovascular. This is the gateway. We've discovered a marker that actually we know is the gateway to chronic inflammation. And there's a lot of CD markers as well that we've been studying, and they all have different, and CD stands for cluster differentiation. Right now we've not added those to the testing because we want to make our testing easily utilized. Some of these tests can be very confusing for physicians, and my philosophy has always been that if a doctor does not interpret a test, they won't order it. So we are developing numerous markers as well. But the marker I'm talking about is called NF-kappa B, and NF-kappa B opens a cascade of all these inflammatory markers. But what's interesting with the NF-kappa B is that a lot of it's set off by certain infections because the body's responding, and a lot of chronic foods that they eat continuously as well, and certain endocrine disruptors, which are chemicals, and a lot of plastics that we're finding out as well. So a very comprehensive program of diagnostics, and then putting together a program on how to help the patient gently detoxify, brings down the inflammation. And if there's only one nutrient, even though I'm not supposed to talk about nutrients today, I'm a really big believer in curcuminoids. Curcuminoids probably block NF-kappa B better than anybody else. So before we used to say, oh, everybody should be taking a multivitamin. Well, you know, maybe, maybe not. I don't want to say to someone, I used to say that CoQ10 is the most important nutrient because it's in every cell of the body. We need that. It's called ubiquinone. But I kind of changed. I got to say that I love a lot of supplements. I just like curcuminoids. And there's other great ones as well. But I just mentioned that for inflammation. But you still need to find out what's causing the inflammation from the testing. So the main reasons why we have inflammation: food allergies, trauma, toxic overload, nutritional deficiencies, overactive immune system. So Dr. Burdett is one of the experts in the country talking about the gut-brain immune system interface. So I'm going to leave that for her, but I wanted to just mention that really one of the keys that we're seeing is leaky gut syndrome, intestinal dysbiosis. Now, leaky gut sounds like an unscientific name, but even physicians and professors from Harvard are mentioning this. It's becoming more common as well. But it really is gut dysbiosis, out of balance, and we're developing more testing for that as well. We do have testing right now, which Dr. Burdett will go over as well, but we're going to develop more markers as we discover more. So all of these paraphysiology all stems from intestinal permeability. If you have a chronic food allergy and you keep on eating it, you're going to destroy the gut lining. You have to have those tight junctions. If you just eliminate the food allergen for a period of time, the patient will get better. But our philosophy is to restore and repair. So this is where we teach physicians, and most integrative doctors know how to treat this. It's the allopathics that don't, that we really have a penchant for really helping them as well. And that's where we want to hopefully teach these doctors about good probiotics, okay? Talking about good gut markers with good shakes and helping them heal that gut, okay? And we can do that. And Dr. Burdett will talk more about zonulin as well as one of the markers. I'm a big believer in infections as one of the other eyes, and that the body does become sick. A lot has to do with endotoxins. LPS is liposaccharides trigger several different types of events: macrophages, activation of the complement cascade, and activation of Hagman factor. So by having this endotoxin can cause the body to have a major, major healing crisis, and that's why we look at LPS. LPS does a lot of bad things to the body. The last thing I want to talk about of the eye, it's insulin resistance. We're seeing a tremendous trend in, here we go. I'm going to skip here. I call it diabesity. 26 million Americans have been diagnosed, according to the CDC, last year with diabetes. That's 26 million. 79 million have been not diagnosed yet, but have been predicted in the United States to have pre-diabetes. So that's before the diagnosis of diabetes, which has to have 3 separate times of elevated glucose. Now, we've made some discoveries recently in the past couple decades on hemoglobin A1C. That's the average of the glucose. There's also some really good tests as well. One of them is called GlycoMark, which looks at postprandial glucose. The reason why I'm mentioning this, we don't specialize in this area as well. We are looking at some other laboratories to reference with, and we should have some really good markers as well. But it's so important to talk about that diabetes has become an epidemic. I have different theories on that. I think a lot has to do with fructose being put into our diet as well. And there's fructose in 80% of the foods. 80% of the foods have fructose. And I'm now calling it diabesity, which that's what it is. It's really sad that there have been several medical organizations that literally have predicted that our children will not outlive their parents, according to some new studies, unfortunately. So I think awareness is going to make an impact on that. And I really believe that children that are leaning towards obesity, which is approximately, this is CDC now, we're talking morbidly obesity, is about 37% of our population. We're not talking just overweight, we're talking obese. And some of these are children, and if we did the right thing, which started better eating habits are established when they're 3 years old. And as parents, sometimes we placate our children, and we just feed them whatever we want so they can shut up, and that's really a bad way to parent. Sorry if you're a parent and you've done that. The truth of the matter is, we have to do a better job. Obesity is a big problem, causing diabetes. It used to be called adult onset. Now it's just type 2 diabetes because we're seeing teenagers as well. So I think that my message here on the 4 I's, is to really help our physicians understand the importance. There's been a lot of studies, and every glucose rise over 1 point above 84 is a 6% increase in the risk of diabetes. Here's what that means. If you go to your doctor tomorrow and your fasting glucose is 90, he's going to say, yes, you're doing great. Okay. And you're going to not see your family physician for a year. This study shows that every point above 84 was correlated with a 6% increase. What does that mean? If you have 90, 90 minus 84 is 6. 6 times 6 is 36%. So you have a 36% chance in your lifetime of getting pre-diabetes leading to diabetes. So this is kind of an awareness, because ultimately we want to have good glucose control. And one of my professors in medical school gave the best example ever. When you have glucose outside the cell, we all need glucose. It's called gluconeogenesis, but we can make glucose from so many different things. Fats, amino acids, glucose, it's all part of the Krebs cycle. We make these ketone bodies. But when you have sugar that's outside the cell because of insulin resistance, and that the pancreas has this insulin but doesn't unlock the door to the cell, it's almost like having orange juice on the floor, take your shoes off, and you step on the floor. What happens? It's sticky, right? It's a sticky feeling. That's what happens when glucose is outside the cell. It's a sticky protein. So in order to make an impact in our society, we have to do a better job in education. And I have a physician colleague who was the medical director of a hyperbaric oxygen center. And you know what her job is? Her job is to put in patients every day into a big chamber, 100% oxygen, because they just had their leg amputated, their knee, up to their knee, their ankle. And every patient, she told me, every patient walked in, she goes, doctor, no one told me that this would happen with diabetes. I finally knew. Now, maybe they weren't listening. Maybe if they forgot to take their glucophage, which is not the panacea, by the way. Now we're seeing that glucophage affects so many other areas as well. We know it causes tremendous amounts of nutritional deficiencies, such as magnesium, B1. I mean, you need B1, you need B6. These are cofactors, okay? How else do you turn on the cell? It's affecting methylation, which really turns up the cell, recirculates neurotransmitters as well, and so many other different things as well. But my point here is that by having the right testing and looking at this patient and saying, Mrs. Smith, you're normal, but you're not optimal. How many doctors say, you're fine, it's in your head, yet they have all these symptoms? And that's where the Dunwoody Edge can help these physicians really make an impact on how to treat their patients differently. I have a real passion for diabetes, because we can make a difference. We can make a huge dent on diabetes. So why is being healthy so controversial? Because there's two paradigms. Allopathic, which is symptom-based, and integrated medicine, which we see symptoms as an attempt for the body to heal itself. We believe, as integrative doctors, that by doing the right things, the body has the potential to heal itself. And that's why nutrition is power. When you change your diet, you change your life. And that's why I love the food sensitivity. If every test was not approved and you could only pick 1 or 2 tests, that would be one of my tests, because I know the power of foods. And I think that that helps put together an individualized plan. And we've had case study after case study with patients eating healthy, organic, and it wasn't until they looked at their food sensitivity, when there's maybe 2 or 3 things that were off, changed their life. We have a lot of athletes that come in, and just by making those 2 or 3 changes, it increased their ability to recover better. They slept better, so there's a lot of power in what we do with that particular diagnostic test. All right, I'm going to fast forward here. I want to talk about the teamwork. A lot of you here are individual that are consultants, that are going to be independent contractors, and we support that. This is why I love America so much, is that we have the ability when you can go out and work for yourself and you can work hard and you can achieve a lot. And that's where I feel that representatives, salespeople are critically important in any organization. Without your voice, we will not have the opportunity to either grow, to communicate more effectively, make an impact with our healthcare system. And I think that you guys are the most important aspect. I mean, I like everybody's important, but without having a proper team representing us, where are we going to go? Okay? We told you how we got started. Dunwoody originally was helping support the clinics that I was involved in, and now we're seeing a major shift, which is a great thing. And without individuals like you, that's not going to happen. And that's why I want to give you the tools. And you can give us these tools, and you can critique us, you can criticize us, that's fine. But we have a support team here, and with Bob's leadership, as you'll see tomorrow, I really believe that teamwork is the key. Because when you take a look at I referring to health is illness. We, as a team, is wellness. So if we look at us as a team, even though you have a different territory, you may connect with Seneca, and you guys may collaborate on one, you guys can learn from each other, okay? I like teams, and when we're committed to change the world, it's the only thing it ever has. This is one of the quotes I picked, because teamwork is working together, we just achieve more. So even though you guys are in the field, if you're hearing something, if you're seeing something new, tell us. We're gonna support you. Now we can't make every change right away, but we do listen to our members on the field. I take that very, very seriously. Sometimes change takes a while because we are a laboratory. We just can't change the test tomorrow. Okay, it takes time, but we want to have the type of organization that we will listen to you, and we will communicate with you. I'll give everybody my card and my email address. You got questions, go to the chain of command, but if you have questions for me medically, if you have a doctor, me and Dr. Bidette are on the phone. We're busy, but we're going to make time. This is what we do. I have no problem talking to any physician that you want us to talk to. So, teamwork to me is important. Now, I love this little thing here because being a rep, and I'm going to embarrass Seneca right now. Hi, Seneca. So, Jennifer forgot to tell everybody here that she originally heard about Dunwoody because she came to Progressive multiple times, by the way. Always asking for me, and I would always hide. No offense, Seneca. But Seneca came in with a smile on her face, even though I hid. That's when I was seeing a lot of patients. I'm like, anyway. But she was professional, she was consistent, she always brought donuts, which I don't want to tell you, that actually turned me off, but that's okay. If you would have bought some organic lollipop, it would have been much better for me. Anyway, but Seneca was very professional, she's very persistent, and it took her, how many times, Seneca? Okay, well, because Seneca had existing customers, which were giving her business, which is good, but she was looking for a big fish. We were a big fish. We were a whale. There's nothing wrong with trying to cast out for a whale, slowly, consistently, professionally. And that's what Seneca did, so I applaud you, Seneca. Because you never know how close you are, and you should never give up. And that's what I love about it. Never give up. Because look how close he was to breaking through. This is a lot of people in our country because they've been beaten up, they've been downtrodden, they've been saying, you can't do it, you can't do it. When I first started Progressive, I had a vision 25 years ago, and I was going through all my medical training, and going to school, working 2 jobs is not easy, but it's not a big deal. But everybody said to me, you're too young. You can't do this, you can't do that. That actually motivated me because I don't like people telling me I can't do anything. But some people, that really affects them. So in order to be a rep, sales rep, whatever you want, okay, I don't think the word sales is a bad thing. We've made that in society. To me, sales is helping someone improve their life. That's why you have to believe. If you do not believe in our diagnostic testing, you should not be here. It's not going to work. And if you don't believe in it, that's fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings at all. Okay? You have to believe in it. I've turned down so many opportunities. It's not about money for me at all. Money is just a tool. It's not my motivation. It's really to help people. We need money, otherwise how are we going to support an organization? It should not be our focus, ever. But being goal-oriented, being service-oriented, having a great turnaround time, we work really hard on this. Are we going to be perfect? No. We're human. But we're getting to the point, we have systems and procedures because of Bob's leadership that have made a dramatic impact, and we need your feedback on that. We've been around a while. We've grown, and we've had some hiccups along the way, and we're going to take responsibility. We're going to own it. If there's a client that was unhappy in the past, we're going to own it. And we're going to say, give us another shot because we made some positive improvements. We grew too quickly, and we didn't have the right infrastructure. We have the infrastructure right now. And we've got tremendous opportunity for growth. And we will continue to we will always have a research development department, and we're constantly looking for new markers as well. And that's my vision, to create better testing. So that's why I believe teamwork is important. For those of you that are interested, Dr. Burdett and I have a radio show, and we do a podcast, and you can use that for other physicians. We will interview other physicians if you want, and they can use it locally. I have no problem with that. We've had a radio show for about five and a half years, something like that, yeah. We have about 500 shows under our belt. We don't promote anything. We just talk about health. We don't talk about use this testing, that testing. We talk about the clinic occasionally, but we just give health information. It's a health show. This is our mission statement and our vision. It's all about education. The Dunwoody Labs way, I love this cartoon. I'll do some tests rather than give you a guess. How many doctors are giving a guess? So you need to constantly educate your doctors that they should think differently about testing. Yes, I know money's an issue. Yes, the insurance may be an issue as well. But truly a patient that really wants to become healthier needs to do certain diagnostics. And we call it the core 4, plus 1 or more. And we'll talk about what that means. And Dr. Smith's going to go over the core 4. And that is our philosophy. And every doctor doesn't have to do that. But if you can get on board with the core 4 and start to educate your clients, you're probably going to see, number 1, they're going to be better at diagnosing. Number 2, you're going to build your business quicker. And that gives you an opportunity to do more as well. But you have to believe in it. And that's why we want all of you to do the testing. I know some of you had the testing today. And just ask questions about that. I think it's important. So Dr. Burdett will teach you the importance of functional diagnostics. For those of you that aren't medically trained, do not be intimidated. Learn, and if you don't know the answer, just be honest with that practitioner and say, hey, that's a really great question. I'll get one of our physicians to talk to you about it. And don't give them an answer that's not true. But talk about your own story. Talk about why you did the testing, and look for a story as well. We really believe by using this protocol, you get to the root cause. So one of my last slides I think is important because all of you are in sales. Now, I'm going to tell you something that you may or may not believe. Doctors are salespeople. Don't kid yourself. Go to that orthopedic surgeon. Boy, they got to be really good to convince people to get that back surgery, right? Wow. Now, hip replacements, knee, some of these surgeries are so antiquated. They're really good, okay? I'm not dissing orthopedic surgeons. I have a lot of friends that are orthopedic surgeons. They're wonderful people. But because they're surgeons, everything is a nail because they got a hammer. That's all they have, right? And my point is, they have good communication skills, most of them do, but they really are selling their philosophy. There's no other difference than an integrative doctor or a traditional OBGYN. Doctors are salespeople. Some don't want to say that, but they are, because we're communicating what our passion is. You need to be the same way. Are you passionate about providing tools for the doctors you come in contact with? And this is the tool. This is not the only tool. This is an important tool. There are other tools that we need to talk about. So this is what we learned in this presentation, and I will take questions. Questions, comments. I want to thank you guys. I do want to share a very quick story on communication, and I'll finish up. Am I doing good time? Did I go over? Okay. Doctors have to be very good listeners, and I'll never forget a patient comes in one day. And I was very busy because doctors, we should see all the patients together. We'd be running around like chickens with a head cut off, right? Cheryl, remember the good old days? So this one man comes to me, and I go, how can I help you? And he was here for his third visit. He goes, Dr. Agoli, I'm feeling better, but I'm really concerned about my wife. And I said, really? What's going on? And he said, she doesn't listen to me anymore. I went, well, tell me more. And she said, well, she doesn't answer me. I went, really? I tell you what, Mr. Smith, when you go home, stand behind your wife about 12 feet and ask her a question and see if she responds. If she doesn't respond, walk up closer and ask the same question. He goes, you're brilliant. You're the best doctor ever. So he leaves. I'm trying to get him out of the room anyway because I have 5 patients waiting. So a month later, he comes back, and I said, what happened? He goes, well, I went home. My wife is cooking by the stove, and I stand back 12 feet like he said, and I said, honey, what's for dinner? No answer. So he's getting really frustrated. He's getting really agitated. He walks closer. He goes, honey, what's for dinner? No answer. He literally taps on her shoulder, and she goes, honey, what's for dinner? He goes, she turns around, for the third damn time, it's chicken. Okay. Why did I tell you that story? Men are not good listeners. He had a hearing problem. And men are in denial. Sorry, Bob, and all the other Tom. Brian, you already know that. So my point is this. That's a little joke there. But men are not good listeners. Women drive healthcare is my ultimate message here. 70 to 75% of our patients and our clients are women, which is a great thing. I think more men are becoming patients because of their spouses, let's be honest, okay? So that's all I have for you guys. I want to thank you guys. So I'm open to questions, comments. If you want to throw something at me, you can. It's up to you. Questions, comments?